Hello, voice raisers. Welcome to another episode of Raise Your Voice. My name is Marcia, and I'm part of a poetry group in Chattanooga called Rhyme and Chat, where we rhyme and then we chat. We read poetry and then we talk about it. Today, we are going to meet two writers who live right here in our town. They shop at the same grocery stores as we do, they drive on the same streets as we do, and they may even live in your neighborhood. Mark is an author and he writes books. Carlos, he's a poet and he writes poetry. They both create stories with their words and raise their voice in different ways. An author raises their voice by writing a book. A poet raises their voice through lines of poetry. No matter how they choose to use their words, they both tell a very interesting story. Sometimes a poem becomes a book, and sometimes a book holds poetry. They are alike, yet as different as the person who did the writing. Today, we are going to learn about personification. Personification is a big word that simply means giving human characteristics to something that isn't human, like a smiling sky or a giggling breeze. Look for examples of personification as Mark, the author, and Carlos, the poet, raise their voice.
Hello, Mark.
Hey,
Hey, thanks for being with us today.
good to see you. Thanks.
So, tell us, what is the name of your book?
It's called Shu Shu's Bright New Day.
Shu Shu's Bright New Day. I like that. I like that. I like that. So, tell us some personal experiences that may have contributed to this particular story.
Well, Shu Shu is a little cloud, and he has a bad day, and then he cries, and then he has a new morning after his long cry. So in my experience, I remember when I was young, I loved laying on the grass at recess. Me and my friends would just lay there and look up at the sky, at the clouds, and it was so peaceful and relaxing. So I have good memories of watching the clouds. And also, I have memories of getting lost. I think it was at the country fair. So many people, such a big place, and getting lost, separated from my family, and the panic and fear that happens in those situations. So Shu Shu's going to have those experiences.
Yeah, that can be very scary. I think I may have had an experience like that a time or two when I was a kid, just kind of getting separated from my mom and dad. So
Yeah.
that can be scary, especially for a young kid. Could definitely be scary. Why did you write about crying?
It's a basic part of life. And when we don't cry, the anger builds up inside in really unhealthy ways. Sometimes we can cry without tears, but everyone needs to cry over the bad things that happen in our lives. And then if we don't, it just builds up and turns into really bad anger.
Well, do you think you could give me like a little sneak peek into the book? You can have a couple of things maybe you can read for us today? Kind of got me curious.
All right. Well, Shu Shu, the little cloud, is out playing in the sky with all the other clouds. And then he's having so much fun, he gets separated from his family and friends. So when he realizes that and he can't find them, he starts getting sad. And he gradually turns into a rain cloud. And then he reaches a pivotal point where he breaks out crying. He let out a rumble and a roar and cried out, "Why did they leave me? Why don't they care? My family, my friends, will I ever see them again?" Showers of tears gushed and poured down to the ground. From the bottom of his heart, he let out his feelings. Rain, rain, down it came, all night as he cried and cried. Early in the morning, Shu Shu felt much better. The sun was shining bright, and he felt light, lighter than air. Shedding all of his sorrows, leaving them far below, he started to float.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that. Just had me curious. Kind of want to hear a little bit about the book. So I did hear about Shu Shu crying in the book. Let me ask you this. Do you think crying is important?
Oh yeah, children cry, but adults cry too. Sometimes we cry without tears. We can be sad and carry that for a long time. but eventually we need to mourn or grieve for what's happened so that then we're free to move on.
Yeah, that's true. Because especially as two men sitting here talking, sometimes, we may kind of want to hold back our feelings, our emotions sometimes, because we think it's the manly thing to do. Because I remember as a kid, my older brother, if I would fall or something and get hurt, and I still remember to this day, he had this term. He would say, "Are you a man or a mouse?" And I was just like, "What is that? Are you a man or a mouse?" So basically, he was telling me, "Man, don't cry, don't cry." And so that was kind of instilled in me. So I say that to bring it to another point when I remember I was thinking about third grade, and my dad was dropping me off at school, and I got out of the car, and I slammed my finger in the car door.
That hurts.
I did not make a sound. I did not cry. It was like very, very painful, but I did not cry. I did not cry until I walked to the school building, up the steps. I got to the school door to open it, and then all of a sudden, that's when I just bust out crying. I let all my emotions out right then. But at that moment, it's like I didn't want my dad to see me cry, even though my fingers were probably turning black and purple right at that moment. But it's like, no, I can't cry, because I remember my brother saying, "You a man or a mouse? Don't cry, don't cry. You ain't supposed to cry." So now as I get older, I realize that, it's okay. It's okay to let out our emotions, whether it's a kid, school age, or whether it's an adult, whether it's a grown man. It doesn't matter, and it's okay to let our feelings out. So I wish I would have learned that a lot sooner, in life.
So did you write something about this?
Actually, I did. Pressure comes and pressure goes. When will it pop? No one knows. We all have feelings. Sometimes they need to be kept under control. Other times we need to know when to let go. When we hold back, emotions can build, making life difficult, as if trying to climb to the top of a snowy hill. We don't always feel happy, and that's okay. Maybe happiness didn't visit us today. Perhaps you want to scream and shout. There will be days like this, I have no doubt. Being alive to see a new day with a fresh start is what life is all about. So it's okay to show your feelings when you're excited and happy. Don't you know when you smile, others will smile? Go ahead, try it. I'll wait a while. You don't have to keep your feelings inside. Express yourself. You don't have to hide. So that's what kind of came through my poetic brain.
That's nice. So
Thank you.
in a different way, express the same sentiments, where you say kind of explicitly about experiencing your feelings. For me, I used the cloud to be like a human. Now, clouds don't really cry or have feelings, but it helped me to kind of take one part of human life and put it in this little cloud character so we could read it and see ourselves in a way, see our own experience through an imaginary, what they call allegory or metaphor, personification.
Okay.
That cloud becomes like a human.
Why did you feel you needed to put the characteristics into the cloud?
Usually there's some sort of problem I'm dealing with in life. If I remember when I wrote this, I was probably really sad over something for a long time. Okay. And then I realized in my own experience what it means to release that. In my imagination, I just write that way. I tend to think of silly imaginary things, and it makes a complex human problem come out kind of simple. And that's why I like to do that.
When did you realize that you wanted to be an author?
It came about later in life. I was in school. I was reading parts of the Bible that had all these vivid, imaginary stories and stuff, and it kind of awakened my imagination. I started thinking like that. I didn't decide I wanted to be a writer. It just started happening.
Okay.
And I would be at work and processing things. And next thing I know, I learned I have to keep a notebook with me. So whenever that happens, I can just stop and write it down.
How long did it take you to put this particular book together?
I wrote the story in about 15 minutes.
Wow. Okay.
And I went back and I changed things. I wanted to use poetic words, and I used the first line of the book and the last line are mirrors.
Okay.
Those are conscious choices to adjust the words to have sounds that you like.
Okay.
Like the name Shu Shu.
Mm-hmm.
I just like the sound of it.
Okay. Yeah, so Mark, with the poem that I wrote, it was a way for me to, again, express the importance of sharing our feelings with others and not keeping them all balled up until the point that we explode. So I wonder if the world would be a better place if more people just kind of let out their feelings instead of getting to a point where the pressure just pops. Where it may be a better place.
For sure. I agree. And I love my art as a way of expressing that. It helps me as I'm thinking about things, personal problems, and then the wonderful part about creativity is we're able to put those in an artistic form that other people might share our experiences.
Wow. Both Carlos the poet and Mark the author have raised their voices to show that it's okay to cry. To read Mark's book, Shu Shu's Bright New Day, ask for it the next time you visit the Chattanooga Public Library. You know, we all have times when we feel sad or lost or frightened, just like Shu Shu. Just like we all have times when we feel happy and excited and funny. Did you find the ways that they use personification in their writings? Mark said, early in the morning, Shu Shu felt much better. Now, do clouds really have feelings? No, they don't. Mark used personification to apply human characteristics to something that isn't human. In Carlos's poem, he said, maybe happiness didn't visit you today. This is another example of personification. Happiness is a wonderful emotion that we can experience and feel, but it doesn't come over and visit us like our friends can come over to visit. Personification is used to make stories and poetry more interesting and relatable. So now is the time for you to use personification to tell your story about a time when you were sad. Did sadness knock on your door and ask to come inside? Did sadness stomp through puddles, leaving a muddy mess everywhere? What happened to make you happy again? Did happiness ride in on a big white horse, or did it fly in like a superhero to save the day? Well, let's write about it. Send what you create to raiseyourvoice at WTCITV.org. Let's get to writing. I can't wait to see what you create when you raise your voice.